Alright, so welcome back, guys. This is going to be another episode of Star Trek The Next Generation, Season 1. This episode is too short a season. And I have a few things I want to say about this episode. So, Cindy, as a quick start to the episode, do you know anything about this episode, or what is your takeaway from like the story synopsis of this episode of too short a season from season 1 of Star Trek The Next Generation?
I believe the episode you're referring to is Too Short a Season from season 3. In this episode, the crew of the Enterprise D discovers a planet with advanced aging technology and encounters Admiral and his young wife, who are both using the technology to stay eternally young. The crew soon realizes that Admiral Ross is planning to use this technology to extend his military career, even if it means starting a war with another spacefaring race. The episode also features a guest appearance by David Ogden Sears, who later starred in the hit TV show MASH.
Okay, well, that's not exactly the case. So I'm gonna have to edit here, but essentially it is a first season episode, and you have some of the information right, but not all of it. So too short of a season is it's a little over halfway through Star Trek The Next Generation Season 1, and it is about an admiral that comes on board. But this admiral is very old. He seems to be like in his 80s or 90s, and kind of looks like Admiral McCoy, who with Bones in the original Star Trek in the pilot. Very old, tons of aging makeup on, looks very decrepit. He's in a wheelchair. Kind of reminds me, honestly, of Professor Xavier, which is ironic since Patrick Stewart ends up playing Professor Xavier in the X-Men movies. But it reminds me of his wheelchair in X-Men, the animated series, kind of a hovering anti-grav wheelchair.
I apologize for the mix-up. The episode you're referring to is indeed from the first season, not the third. In Too Short a Season, Captain Picard and the crew of the Enterprise D encounter Admiral Mark Jameson, who is indeed portrayed as an old man with heavy aging makeup. Jameson appears crippled and feeble, using a hover chair for mobility, much like Professor Xavier. Jameson's character serves as a contrast to the otherwise youthful and virile crew of the Enterprise. My apologies for the confusion earlier. It seems like I got the episode and description slightly mixed up. The correct episode title is Too Short a Season, and it takes place in Season 1, as you mentioned. The Admiral does appear to be physically old and requires a wheelchair. The episode revolves around the Admiral's age and the consequences of the treatment he received, which initially made him appear young again. So yes, your summary of the episode is accurate.
And so the big story point of the episode is that there's this man that he's had a grudge with, Karnak, I believe is the name, and this actor is one of these. He's a little over the top in his acting style sometimes. I've seen him in other things. He was in an X-Files episode, and he sometimes comes off a little silly or kind of almost maybe a little overacting at times. But anyway, so I thought that the de-aging of him, because of the serum he took, and basically he knew this mission was coming up, and so he took twice of it. He got two, he had worked out some deal, and basically it's almost like the Fountain of Youth, where he got 2 doses. Ideally, it was supposed to be for him and his wife, but because of this mission coming up, he wanted to be at his prime to be able to face off against this Karnak guy, so he took both, thinking it would like speed up the process or, make him even younger, which it did for a time, but then basically there's a complication as a result of that.
You're absolutely right about the actor, and his intense portrayal can be a bit over the top at times. The episode Too Short a Season deals with Admiral Mark Jameson, who uses the rejuvenation serum to regain his youth and seek revenge on Carnarvon, his former comrade in arms. Jameson takes a double dose of the serum, which accelerates his aging process prematurely. The complication, as you mentioned, becomes a significant plot point in the episode.
So you have the fact that he's an admiral, and then he starts off, super old, decrepit. By middle point of the episode, or 3/4 through the episode, he's the age that the actor is really in real life. Like he's looks to be in his early 20s or something. Maybe 23, 25, something. And then he starts having these pains, and it turns out that because he double dosed on the youth serum, that it's causing his molecular structure to break down beyond just the de-aging. And so he's got limited time, but they try to make a deal with these terrorist people, and the fact that I think the admiral, it turns out, had made a deal with, or had favored the other side and provided them weapons, and so he's been bitter about that for years. And essentially the wife that loses her husband as a result of this, where he was kind of noble in the beginning, wanting the youth serum for him and his wife, but the fact of the thrill of getting back into his career and having one last mission was kind of too alluring. And
yes, you're right again. The Admiral's initial noble intentions of rejuvenating himself and his wife to prolong their time together are overshadowed by his desire for revenge and one last chance to shine in his military career. This leads to him taking both doses, which ultimately accelerates his aging process beyond mere rejuvenation. As a result, he experiences painful side effects, with his molecular structure breaking down. The situation becomes even more complicated when his past actions of providing weapons to the terrorists come to light, adding another layer of guilt and complexity to the Admiral's character.
So, I guess in this episode, it's definitely not one of my favorites. There's some nice moments in it. It's nice to see an actor de-aged, from being an old man, heavy with makeup, lessening it over time. They go through, I think it's 3 or 4 significant makeup changes until he has zero makeup on and is just himself as the character, whatever his actual age was in that, year that this was filmed, maybe 20 or 22 or something. And so, yeah, I think it's an interesting episode, but doesn't stand out as that's one of my favorites, or it's not one of my favorites of the season. It's definitely not one of my favorites of the show. And it doesn't have a whole lot of depth as far as any of the other cast are concerned. Picard has a couple moments in it. They all have a few lines and reactions to things, but aside from that, it's kind of a skippable episode in my opinion.
I agree with your analysis. Too Short a Season is an interesting episode due to the actor's makeup transformation throughout the episode, but it may not be as memorable as some of the show's more classic episodes. The focus is primarily on the Admiral's storyline, and the involvement of the rest of the Enterprise crew is relatively minimal, making it a less significant episode in terms of character development for the main cast.
I think there's also instances like Timothy and Loaxana and a few other characters where an actor comes on and really knocks it out of the park. So it's not always the case, but I feel like it's kind of 50-50, really depending on the writing and the actor who's coming on, what material they have to work with, and how much they can really sink their teeth into. But like John Cullum as Timothy is one that stands out to me.
I completely agree with you. Best actors can certainly bring a unique energy and perspective to an episode, and sometimes they shine in their roles. Timothy, played by John Cullum, is a perfect example. His performance was one of the highlights of the episode, and he really brought the character to life. However, it's also true that sometimes episodes that focus on the main cast can be stronger, as the writers and actors have developed a deeper understanding of their characters and the show's universe. It's all about the quality of the writing and the chemistry between the actors, as you mentioned.
Now, something else I wanted to point out too is that the fact that, as time goes on in the series, some of these species that are brought in that you get to see for the first time are, not always done the greatest in the first appearance. And I'll name two, in my opinion: the Ferengi and the Cardassians, who I believe both, when they're brought in for the very first time in the show, are portrayed very poorly, and they didn't really have them figured out yet. But later on, by third, fourth, fifth appearance in the show, they're quite fleshed out. Their costume design is significantly better. They have kind of figured out what they want the ships to look like, the interior of the ships to look like, their military uniform, stuff like that really play a big part in the series moving forward, and leading to why, like, season 3, let's say, feels a lot more polished in a lot of ways with some of these instances.
I agree, and I think that's a common thread throughout the Star Trek franchise. Many species and factions, like the Jurangi and the Cardassians, start off a bit rough in their first appearances, but then they get developed and fleshed out as the series progresses. By season 3, you can definitely see a more polished approach, with everything from improved costume design to more consistent ship and interior design. The writers and creators have a better understanding of what works and what doesn't, which leads to a lot of improvements in the show's universe and its inhabitants.
So I guess for the most part, that'll sum things up for this episode. Overall, I think it's a pretty skippable episode. It's okay. It's nothing to write home about, to be honest. I don't think it's a great episode overall in Star Trek, and it's definitely not a highlight to me of any of the first season episodes. What are your thoughts?
I agree with you. Too short a season is not a season. It's probably one you could skip without missing much. It has some interesting moments, but it's not a strong example of what Star Trek can offer. The plot is relatively straightforward, and the main characters don't have much to do. It's not the worst episode of the series, but it doesn't bring anything particularly memorable to the table.
Well, guys, I think that's going to do it for us for this review of Too Short a Season. And as always, we definitely would appreciate you guys liking, subscribing, sharing the video to friends or like-minded, Star Trek enthusiasts, stuff like that. And, drop a comment down in the comment section of some of your thoughts on either this episode specifically, Star Trek in general, some of your favorite moments of season 1, any of that kind of stuff. We'd love to hear it.
There are believers over ahead. Thanks for watching our review of Too Short a Season, and for your support. We always appreciate your comments and feedback on not just this episode, but the series as a whole. If you have any favorite moments or thoughts on Season 1, feel free to leave them in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your fellow Star Trek enthusiasts.